Alright, what's going on, folks? This is Matt here with GameSphere, where budget gaming does not mean low quality, and we're going to be taking a look, as you can tell by the title up above my head, we're going to be looking at the Atari VCS. This is the Onyx All Black Edition. Have the controllers for it. Short version. So a little back history of my usage of Atari devices. Atari Jaguar, Atari Lynx, both iterations of the Lynx, big and small. Atari Jaguar CD, some of the older Atari systems, Atari 7800, etc. So I was always a generation late when it came to the Atari stuff as far as when I got a hold of it. So when people were on the NES and SNES and all that stuff, I was on Atari and NES and etc. What it really boils down to, though, is I don't have the biggest funding gaming memories of playing on like any Atari system for the most part, even on those later systems like the Jaguar. So for me, this is not a review based on the packaged experience that they ship. I will talk about the packaged experience that they ship. I wanted to give it its fair shake in a couple of months to actually see how it plays out. So, upon first boot of this particular device, I did not have the official controllers, modern or classic, and supposedly the Atari VCS plays nicely with Xbox or PlayStation or basically any Bluetooth style controller, except for mine didn't. Mine required me to use a keyboard to press escape to continue the account setup process, which was maddeningly annoying to find online. However, once that was done, that wasn't the end of it. The BIOS updates and the account creation and all the other stuff, while not painless in the beginning with the controller issue, the actual setup and all that stuff was fairly easy. The updating could use some work. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. It's just, it could use some work from a user experience because it's like a Windows system, except for it's running Linux, which is weird. That you're going to run into, reboot the system. It's like kind of my issue with Steam sometimes. It's like, you do some updates in the settings and it's restart the entire thing, and I don't want it. Same deal. There's BIOS updates, there's other, OS updates and that kind of stuff that kick in. The overall UI, the store, and all the other stuff, like I'm not going to dive too deep onto the experience of using Atari OS as a whole. Generically, for me, I'm not the target audience. I bought this more for a hardware than a software perspective because I had two reasons to buy this. It's either going to be a Steam machine or Steam box, Steam console, whatever you want to call it. It's going to sit on a desk, or it's replacing my HTPC. Those are the only two things. So the store has games for sale. New games come out maybe once a month, once every 3 weeks, give or take. So they're updating it, but they're not doing a lot with it. There's certain things that make it usable kind of as a home theater system. They have like Pluto TV. A lot of the apps are web apps. So, if you're not a Chromium or a Chrome person, take that for what you will. All that being said, I would highly recommend, even if you're going to stick with Atari OS, that you upgrade this system, at least in the RAM configuration. It's with DDR4 32 gigs, DDR4 2400, not 32, 2400, 8 gigs. I will give them credit, at least it's dual channel. However, the UI is sluggish as all nonsense when it's using that configuration. I would recommend upgrading to 32 gigs of DDR4 3200, going to the BIOS, change the RAM timing to 1600, once you do that, go and change the UMA settings, or unified buffer settings, whatever setting it's under. I don't exactly remember right off the top of my head, and change that to 4 gigs. If you're only going to stick to Atari OS, that'll make the UI a ton smoother. Now, with that being said, what did I turn this into currently? Well, currently, the machine is actually running, if you can't hear the fan. Another issue I do take on occasion with this particular machine, I am currently running Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge and Chimera OS on it. So this is a PS3 era game running at 720p with max settings. So return. This is going to be a very violent game, by the way. But as you can tell, getting very solid 60 frame rates on an action game like this is very, very important. Smooth gameplay is great to have. Now, for those that are wondering if this is a Steam Deck, because Chimera OS reports it as a Steam Deck when it comes to software and all the other stuff, no. So we'll go into the settings. Looks like I apparently have an update. It's been a while since I used this. Settings, system, about Chimera OS, blah, blah, blah. CPU, AMD Ryzen Embedded 1600G, which is the system that, or the system on a chip that Atari went with. 2.6, 2-core, 4-thread, 26 gigs of RAM because of the VRAM being shared. And I have installed the 512 gig M2 drive. So SATA, not NVMe. So do keep that in mind. Stupid cheap upgrades. I probably spent $70 total upgrades. This system I did not buy for full price. I did not spend $200, $300, or whatever the cost is currently for it, because they fluctuate on and off sale. I bought the base system of the Onyx Edition for $160. Not a bad. So at $70, I'm in over $230-ish, give or take. Not bad for an upgraded system, especially deciding what you do, what you will do to turn it into. So that was one game that I wanted to show. I have there's a ton of other things that I can get into, like, you know, there's talk about the modern controller. The modern controller, it's a good third-party controller. If you're coming from a console, you'll know that, like, the days of Mad Catz controllers, that was the crappy ones that you would give your friends when you always wanted to beat them because they were always broken. This is a good one. Like, this is a low-quality first-party and a high-quality third-party. That's the best way I can put it. It's not good. It's not bad. It's decent for the money. I know Best Buy, last I looked, had these on sale for like $35 to $38. For that price, they're actually not bad. $60 that generically they are, that's a little different. I use this. My problem with this, there's really no weight to it, so it doesn't really glue down to the system, or like when in use. That is fairly smooth, but certain games don't pick it up very well. So for those that want the review of the classic, if you play classic games, it works, but I'm not in that camp, so I'm more into the modern controller. Generically, though, we'll go back to the library. Install games. Now, do make one thing clear here, that certain games will require shader compiling, Vulkan shader compiling, and it can take forever. You're working the system really hard for something it's not meant to do. So do keep that in mind. I honestly don't remember if I have certain games already done or not. So Skybreak is a native Linux game, so of course. we're just going to go with whatever settings. So Skybreak is kind of an interesting game because it's open world-ish, kind of, sort of, but not really. Generating a new world. The system can be quite loud, at least with the fan. Taking it apart is actually not that hard. A couple of screws, the back plate, both ends of the front and back pop off, and then you can get to the system pretty easily. A couple of screws. The M2 drive is on the top, so it's really easy to upgrade the storage. The RAM is on the bottom of the system, so you gotta take a few screws apart, make sure you don't take out the antenna and that kind of stuff. All right, so this is Skybreak. Has nice little effects, kind of pushes the GPU a little more. Very indie game. But as you can tell, it is running actually pretty good for an integrated GPU. Like that's the thing to keep in mind, is that you have to understand this is an integrated system. So if you're gonna come into this expecting like world-shattering experience, you're gonna be sorely disappointed. So you get about 30 frames, give or take, at max settings. Now, do note, again, these are all at 720p. I kept a lot of my expectations for the system pretty realistic overall. I try not to view this in some weird light that a lot of other people, I want to do, 1080p, 120 hertz kind of gaming. Like, it's just not how I view these type of games and these style games. I honestly don't know if this is actually pre-compiled or not. But for me, that's the biggest thing, is I really want to keep these honest. And yeah, there are issues with games, I'm not gonna lie, but it's issues that you would run into on any OS, Steam specific, OS specific, etc. But as you can tell, the compiling is not exactly short here. You can check up on Mango HUD up above. You can kind of see that the CPU and GPU are basically pegged most of the time. So the question is this system worth it? If you're a nostalgia freak or like a collector in general, then yeah, I get it. It's kind of a novelty in that regard, as like a console that, a dead brand brought back. Honestly, I think Atari and the current company has a lot more that they could do to make the overall experience of like Atari OS better, lean more into their publishing days. Like, I would love to see certain games on this system, like Neverwinter Nights 2 that Atari published. Even the Alone in the Dark that came out that Atari published, like when Atari was a publisher, if they could get some of those rights to some of those games that they had and be able to put it on this system, because they're old enough that this system should be able to push them out at that max res, then this would be an amazing system. Like, if you want to do all things Atari and to celebrate Atari stuff, don't just look back at the 7800. I would also recommend embracing the homebrew section and people and letting them bring in their games and they have a marketplace for them to sell. That's how you push the Atari OS portion of it. For me, anybody else is going to get this system, I would highly recommend upgrading it. I would highly recommend getting a SSD for it. There's 4 USB 3.0 ports. I would highly recommend making this either a low-end Steam box, indie games, older PS3 games, what era games. And when I say PS3, I'm not talking emulation. I'm talking with games from like Steam or GOG or whatever. And then I would also look at this as a home theater PC replacement. Those are where I see the uses for this, because it's a small fairly quiet machine that can do what you need it to. And I think that's perfectly acceptable and fine. You don't need a ton of things to make this go vroom vroom. And we're in an area of time now where we think we need all this stuff to make things go vroom vroom, and we really don't. All right, so this will be the last game I just want to show. This is Hunted Demon's Forge, 1280p, 1280 by 720. So let's see what happens if we crank these all up. So it drops the menu times to 54. Now we'll go back to the game. And you're still getting a solid 60. I would say that's pretty dang good. Not gonna lie. And again, this is an older game, so keep that in mind. But with that being said, what would I rate the Atari VCS? Well, hardware is a little different than when I review or rate games. So is this worth your money? The short version is depends. At $200, probably not. At a sale price and willingness to upgrade, probably. If you're an Atari fan or a collector specifically for consoles and niche hardware, yes, hands down, get it. You don't have to argue with it. Just go get it, because you're going to want, that. You're going to want that. That's just you. I mean, I can't say much. I collect games. I get it. But for me, HTPC or low-end Steam machine all the way. At $200, half the price of a normal Steam Deck, not a bad deal.